think I've got enough juice in my broadband this afternoon to let my camera come on. So you have to imagine that you can see me. I hope everyone can hear me. If you're not, when you're not speaking, can you all turn your mics off? Put yourselves on mute, please, so we reduce the amount of background noise. Thank you. Right, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Warwickshire Schools Forum this afternoon. Few items on the agenda. We've got 2 matters for decision and 3 items for information and comment. And just as a bit of advance notice, I do have another item at the end under Chair's business. Okay. So Neil, do we have any apologies, please?
We do, Phil. We have apologies from Rose Gunn, Clive Sentence, Tony Dix, and Michael Moran. We also have Joss Andrews, who potentially will join the meeting, but a little bit late.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Item 2 is the actions from the meeting held on 1st of October. Do we agree that they're a true and fair record? Any dissent? Okay.
Can I add something here, Phil?
Yeah, Neil, of course.
Okay, yeah. It's just, as you see, the minutes are very much truncated to previous minutes when we actually held Schools Forum as a proper meeting around a table. Because these meetings are now recorded, because they're a public meeting, so have to be recorded. We have been doing verbatim minutes, but then just truncating them just into the actions and voting. What we propose to do is, because doing the verbatim minutes took someone quite a long time, we're proposing not to do that again. We would do these truncated minutes, but for each item, agenda item, we would put the start time and the end time of those items on the broadcast. So you'll have a link to the broadcast. If you want to actually listen to that again, then you can. So it just makes it much easier for us to actually manage the process if Schools Forum agree with that suggestion.
And that meeting's accessible on the Warwickshire website anyway, Neil, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone happy with that? Okay. Thank you very much. We're moving on into the 21st century. Right. Right. Item 3 then. Is Pupil Growth Fund.
And Bern Timings will be presenting this report.
Okay, the floor is yours, Bern.
Yeah, I'm just protect myself off mute, doesn't it, before I start talking?
Yeah, yes.
21st century, we just said. Okay, so this is the growth funding estimate for 2021-22. As ever, this supports growing schools across the county, where we're looking at either boys classes or new extensions, expansions, new schools as well, in fact, to deal with the increasing pupil numbers that we're expecting. And as part of that, it includes the top-up funding that supports schools' budgets longer term if they don't quite make that kind of a full additional class in the first few years. It's all there, as has been in previous years. This year we've got built in a bit of buffer to cover eventualities such as the new secondary school in Rugby that's being delivered by the Department for Education. We have some contingency built in case that doesn't happen, so we can still deal with that. And we also have the pre-opening funding for a new primary school in Rugby as well, built into the figures there. So that's really it for me. Any questions from anybody on this one?
Okay, comments, questions, please. Yeah, Jane Burrows, please.
Hi, Byrne. Have you got included within the figures the new Bishop's Touchbrook secondary or all through school?
Not in this one yet, Jane. That will be in next year's figures. Yes, that's a 2023 opening, so there won't be any call on the funds until 22.
Okay, thank you.
And going forward is we're looking at £2.5 million a year. So presumably this is going to be an ongoing thing over the next few years, given the amount of development that's going on in Warwickshire.
That's right, Philip. Yes. So we foresee this being required for the next. Well, definitely at the moment, as far as things go, we do try and make sure that every year the report that comes to you is estimated based on the information we have. So there is some data behind it that we factored in where we know we're going to need expansions, where we've got existing expansions, and where new schools are going to start. So it should be a live reporting of what we're expecting to spend in the next year. But yes, we're looking at many new schools, many more Warwickshire classes over the next, say, 10 to 15 years. So yes.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously there are planning permissions going through all the time, but these things take maybe up to 10 years to develop, doesn't it? So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we have a new school, probably at least a new school open every year for the next, let's say, at least 5 years in my current medium-term view. But yeah, beyond that as well. Okay,
thank you, Jane.
What would be useful, just in section 5, when we're talking about the growth funding requirements for 21-22, is actually comparing it to what we actually have in the fund.
Okay.
So, because we've talked about with Neil what we have in the schools block, what will be remaining after the national funding formula allocations, but it would be really useful to know what our balance is, what the projected spend is, and what any carry forward is over the next few years, so that we can see if there's any surplus or deficit that we need to cover.
Yes, no, I understand, Jane. Yes, no problem. We can include that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Get that circulated.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, Jane. It's about having a bit more of a strategic view, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just add something there?
Yeah.
I mean, we can do that. The issue we have at the moment is we don't know what the growth fund allocation is for 21-22.
We're finding that out in December.
We are finding, yeah, later this month, and it's a discussion we had earlier with officers around about have we got the timing of the meetings right? And a paper is going to go to Schools Forum in January to suggest a realignment of meetings to key decision points, because historically the December one was when we discussed the local formula and it was approved. When we had the national funding formula, we had to slip in the January one because that's when we had to discuss that. So now our view is probably the January one is more important than the December one. So then we can bring everything back to Schools Forum on future funding for out of the schools block to the same meeting rather than having these separate papers.
Yeah, because you indicated, Neil, I think that you're not expecting to get that information until just before Christmas. So
literally it'd be a few days
no
before
time for us to meet and discuss it. So in a sense, the January meeting has now become what historically was the December one.
Yes.
Just a lot of the business, and we've drifted into having a meeting in December and then slotting an extra one in January. So yeah, okay, thank you for that. All right, any more comments on item 3 before we move on, please? Okay, right, item 4 is the delegation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the annual de-delegation report that comes to Schools Forum for decision. And just to remind you that it's for decision by maintained schools only, and it's decision by sector, so by secondary and by primary schools. In making your decision with Schools Forum, I think it is right, the same with any consultations we undertake, is to take the views of schools on board during the discussions. So you have before you the paper and the 3 services that support our 2 secondary schools and the 7 services that support our 133 primary schools. If anybody has any questions around any of the services, then there are officers here today that should be able to answer those.
Well, initially, yeah, I do have a question on the paragraph on free school meals eligibility, and the sentence which is at the bottom of page 2 that says schools, if we didn't do dedelegation, schools will not have access to real-time eligibility data or the dedicated Department for Work and Pensions helpline. That implies to me that schools can now have access to the information that tells them which parents to target for free school meals and therefore to get to their pupil premium. Is that correct?
Is someone from Burns?
Yeah, I'll get that one. If I understand your question correctly, Philip, it's not quite as simple as that the schools could input, say, all their parents and find out who would be eligible. The parents have to actively apply. There's certain information that they would need from the parents that they wouldn't have from the whole cohort of parents. The comment on it not being available is because the checker that's provided by the Department of Work and Pensions is available to local authorities or indeed third-party companies on a licence. So schools couldn't access that directly themselves. They would have to either pay for a third-party company or continue to pay for the LA to access that system. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so we're still in the position that really we can't, because schools, as you know, are always trying to maximise their pupil premium, but we find it very difficult because all we can do is send out letters and extort people to apply, and we're not necessarily getting through to the people that we need to, and so that's still the position then.
It is, unfortunately, yes. I mean, if schools were able to get the information from all their parents that are relevant, you could definitely put them all in the system and find out who was eligible, but it is still reliant on the parents providing the necessary information.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any comments from anyone before we go through this in terms of approval?
Okay, shall we do the...
Right, Griffiths, I think, sorry, wants to speak.
Yes, can I just ask, I understand some of the smaller elements, but what's the rationale for not delegating things like school improvement to schools, so that they can make their own decisions about what they want to buy? What's the rationale behind not delegating it?
I think the issue is we do delegate it, but this is the opportunity for maintained schools to de-delegate it, which I've never liked the word, back to the local authority to provide it. And that's the decision Schools Forum are making. Do you want to de-delegate those services, the cost of those services, out of the schools' budgets and into the LA's budget to provide those services for maintained schools?
So in other words, if we don't de-delegate, there's nothing to pay for the officers which provide intervention work. Is that correct? Martin Davis.
In short, the answer on that one is yes. If there isn't the funding to pay for the staffing, we wouldn't be able to provide the range of support provision on school improvement that we are affording at this time. So I'd always prefer a longer lead-in because we know how important the wellbeing offer and the school improvement offer is for our colleagues in leadership positions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Martin.
Yes, just to say that we benefited very much from improvement support following an Ofsted inspection report, and we have found this very valuable. And although I appreciate that it could be purchased independently, so to speak, I think on the whole we found very valuable having the LA support in this area.
Thank you for that. Are we ready to go forward to make the decisions then? Any other speakers?
No. Okay. Right. So if I start with the secondary school vote first, which is Alison as the only representative of a maintained secondary school, whether she agrees or disagrees with de-delegating those 3 services back to the LA.
you've given it as a do you this or do you that, so I can't vote yes. Do you want to phrase it so I can vote on it?
Oh, sorry. Right, the representative of maintained secondary schools on the school forum is asked to decide whether to support the continued dedelegation of the following services in 21-22. Free school meals.
Yes.
English as an additional language.
Yes.
Trade union facility time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And if we now go on to the primary schools, I assume Joss hasn't arrived yet, so we have 7 people here that have a right to vote, which is Matthew Bowen, Becky Harrison, Martin Davis, Phil Johnson, Faye Padfield, Larry Granelli, and Kevin Griffith.
Okay, so if you indicate by putting your hand up, please, on your electronic hand. Right, so first one is those in favour of free school meal eligibility.
So all 7 in favour. Thank you.
Okay. And the next one is, can you put your hands down, please? Right. The next one is English as an additional language.
Okay, that's 4.
Yeah. Close. Lower your hands then, please.
Yeah. And do we need to just confirm those people that were against it, just for completeness?
Those against, please.
So the 3 against, that's the 7.
Okay.
So next one is trade union facility time. All 7 in favour.
Okay, hands down, please. Right, the next one is school improvement.
That's 5 in favour.
Okay. And those against that, please.
That was 3.
Well, it's 2, isn't it?
2 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's complete.
Yeah.
Gypsy and Romeo Travellers.
Gypsy and Romeo Travellers.
That's 6 in favour.
Okay, hands down, please.
And then one against, was it?
Yeah. Okay. Behaviour support services.
Five,
yeah. So those against that? Right, any abstentions then on that one?
Excuse me, I think I'm having trouble rising and lowering on my machine, so I don't know whether you picked me up on that last vote. It's Larry
Where did you vote, Larry?
What did you
Sorry?
vote?
Which way did you...
I voted in favour.
Okay, all right. Okay, have you got that then, Neil?
Yeah.
Right, and the last one is medical referrals for employees. And that's everyone, I think.
That's everybody. That's great. Thank you ever so much.
Okay. Right. Item 5 then is SEND and Inclusion Change Programme. This is Dwayne, I think, is it?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm just going to provide you with progress and update on the SEND and Inclusion Change Programme, and obviously welcome all comments and any questions. So just to sort of summarise, the SEND and Inclusion Change Programme was approved by Cabinet in June and July of this year. The vision for the programme is that we want all our children and young people to lead fulfilling lives and to be part of their local communities. There are 3 main focus points for the SEND and Inclusion Change Programme, and that is improving outcomes for young people, children and young people with special education needs and disabilities. As we know, these are in decline, to take decisions in a clear, fair and transparent way, and to ensure the systems that are in place are sustainable, not in the short term, but in the longer term. And I think finally, to make sure that the funding that is available to us, we are living within our means and within the funding we have available. There are 31 projects in total within the SEND and Change Programme, and in terms of financial update, we will be taking this to the programme board in January of 2021. In terms of programme level updates, we launched the programme with our head teachers at the Head Teacher Conference on the 21st of October, and we were pleased to have Dame Christine Lenaham from the Council of Disabled Children as a keynote speaker. In terms of the programme board, which is set up, and the governance structure, it has improved the financial strategy in terms of how we are measuring the impact there. It's also improved the communication strategies and our organisational development approach towards the programme. In terms of elective members, we saw the first task and finish group last week, in where it was a cross-party delegation, and where we worked with the councils and updated them for comments around the SEND and Inclusion Change Programme. We also have in place external providers to make sure that any quality assurance issues we have with the programme are also given due consideration. In terms of the project level and the update from there, if I just, for those that are relatively new to the Schools Forum, when we set up a project, we do initially what we call the planning preparation document, and we call them PPDs. We develop the PPDs into full business cases, and when we develop in the full business case, what we look at is the systems as is, how the way we are operating, and then as we work through, we look at the to be, and that is what we intend the new process or the developments to be. And what we then do is make a decision on when we go live with the implementations of programmes. There are 11 programmes that are currently in place. Is the PACE School, which is on task for opening in September 2021. We're looking at value for money reviews. I've discussed this before, and that's looking at our internal services and what we offer to schools, and to make sure what we offer is value for money, but also produce good or better outcomes to support our schools. We're looking at how we make the decisions around needs-focused panels, and how we use alternative provision in the best possible way for our learners. We're also looking at expanding and improving early intervention within our 0 to 5 range, and that is making sure we get the right support in at the right time as early as possible for our children. Internally, we are looking at the implementation of synergy and how we use synergy to make sure that we are capturing our finance decisions as best as we can, and how our local offer signpost families and young people to support when and where necessary. We have a trial which we are looking at, and it's called Changing the Conversation, and that looks at the behaviours in the system. And one of the big projects we've been looking is reviewing children that are not receiving their education entitlement. One of the programmes that have been passed this week is a quality assurance framework around the education, health and care plans, and around the advice that feeds into the plan that offers specificity and how we quantify provision for our schools. And last but not least, in the first tranche of projects is expanding representation on the Parent Carer Forum. Our next steps, we are going to continue to roll out the projects within the Phase 1 programme. We are looking at, and this is from feedback, I must say, from the extraordinary meeting we had last week, we're looking at prioritisation of one of our projects, which is Changing the Conversation, against how we're going to look at a new funding model. So I think we're going to move the funding model up and the change in the conversation probably into Phase 2, but that is yet to be decided and will go to the programme board. So that gives you a brief update in terms of the Send and Inclusion Change programme. I'm assuming, and I'm making the assumption that you've read the report that comes out, so I'm happy to sort of answer any questions around this and provide any feedback necessary.
Okay, Dwayne, thank you very much for that. On project 5 at the top of page 3, the expanding and improving access to early intervention in early years at the 0 to 5. Do we know how many, what's the percentage of children in the county that don't go to any settings before they arrive at school in the year of their statutory school age?
Well, actually, it's almost as if we don't know what we don't know. I'm actually leading on a project with that at the moment with our early years around attendance via the COVID situation. So I'd be happy to report that back. I don't have the actual figures today, but I know some work has been done around identifying those children that are entitled to early support, the age 2 through the early years, as well as the age 3 support. So yeah, I haven't got the figures today, but I can ask colleagues for them figures.
All right, thank you. And continuing on that theme, our range of nurseries across the county is quite variable, isn't it? I mean, some are very good, some of them the quality is a bit questionable. Do they have the skills to assess the children and apply for the HCPs, so that obviously, I mean, your objective there relies on those assessments and those being done in that early stage, doesn't it?
Not necessarily. No, I wouldn't agree there. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah. So, in terms of the education, health and care plan, it is just that, education, health and care. And in my previous role, I set up a system whereby our health professionals were the referrers. So basically, we do know, on average, every year, children that are born with either life-limiting or life-threatening or, extremely rare syndromes. And therefore the referring body would be our health professionals.
All right. So you're not relying on the nursery schools to do that. You're getting it from other sources. Yeah, I get that now.
Yeah, for the high level of need, for the most complex children, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And is the current situation with sort of restricted access of professionals into schools affecting the SEND programme at all? Because obviously some of the work's being done online, whereas otherwise it would have been done in person, face to face at school. Is that having an impact?
No, not at all, to be honest with you. if I've been in post, I think is 9 months now, and the amount of preparation to get this to a situation where we can move forward with a robust programme has been a lot of work. Working on teams like this has been fine. We've got engagement from colleagues. I think I can't ignore the COVID, obviously none of us can, but it certainly hasn't hampered what we need to do, and we have engaged across our settings as well. Yeah, so it's not hindering.
All right, thank you. Martin Davis, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry to disagree.
Martin, you're on mute.
Oh, right, sorry.
Martin, I think you're still muted.
Right, now.
Martin, you came off mute and then went back on very quickly.
I can hear you now. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Ignore the screen then. The point I was going to raise is our school had to accept a pupil with multiple difficulties coming actually from another authority, so there's no school that our head could make any reference to. It's been quite impossible to get an EHCP, partly because the ed psych person couldn't get into the school, and surely there must be other cases like that.
Martin, that shouldn't be the case, because EPs are going into schools. We have a risk assessment as a local authority in terms of ensuring that we are working within bubbles. So in terms of risk assessment, they would go into one school. Also, there have been, making arrangements to do assessments. So I'm happy to discuss that outside of the schools forum, but that surely shouldn't be the case in terms of EP involvement, because they are going into schools.
Right. Okay. Rebecca Harrison, please.
Hi, I'd just like to echo Martin on that one. We've been having issues with educational psychologists. We've had phone calls and maybe a bit of teams, but they actually need to be on site visiting the children to see the children in the setting, and that isn't what's going on.
And again, Rebecca, I mean, today isn't about the EP service. Today is about the Send and Inclusion programme, which is slightly different. However, so more than happy to speak to Anne Rickett, who's the head of the service, and I will speak to her later. But I don't think the EP service has anything to do with the Send and Inclusion Change programme. I think that's a different issue. But again, I will take that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Brown, please.
Just to mention, really picking up on Martin's point, I've actually spoken to that head teacher today, Martin, along with a few other head teachers, and I've just echoed what really Dwayne's just said, and that is, I have had experience with ed sites coming into school. Other schools have. I do know that it's inconsistent. I do know that the schools have struggled with that, and I've referred them to speak to Anne Ricketts. I think Anne Ricketts needs to know about this, and she can deal with this.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin Griffiths, please.
Dwayne, where are we at now on enhanced provision in mainstream schools?
Yes, okay, so I met with all the resource provision leads last Friday. That's, it was a really, really positive meeting. I have another meeting set up next week with them. So that we have capacity now. There's quite significant amount of capacity in terms of resource provision. And if I draw you to the appendix on my report, which is page 8 of the report, that is our special schools, and I think sorry, I'm just trying to find the. So resource provision, I think, is, commissioners. So we've looked at the resource provisions that are in place. Yeah, so we've set them all up in terms of the strategy. I met with them last week in terms of children going there. It is now part of our local offer. I think the paddocks has opened, and Jane has opened the paddocks. We have another one coming online after Christmas. So we have built capacity. What we need now is to build confidence. And I say confidence amongst the families and sort of schools. The needs can be met within the resource provision. I'd also commissioned about 2 months ago, I'd commissioned one of my team, who is an Ofsted inspector, to go in and have a look with one of the school leaders from our special schools at the provision that was there and what was being delivered. And the outcome and findings there was really positive. So, you know, I'm happy to say, you know, that it's going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Bromley.
Hi, Dwayne. I just wanted to ask you for a little bit more information about your plan for early years. I understand that you're trying to increase the amount of children with EHC plans, but I wanted to know how that relates to kind of improving access to early intervention, because we know that having an EHC plan is only part of the picture. And it's really about the adults and their expertise and their ability to support that child whilst they're in settings, as well as with their parents. So what kind of are you building around that in order to help that early intervention to happen?
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. I think one of the things is making sure, Sarah, that our children in our communities with the highest needs have the right level of support at the right time. For other children, that will be through the assess plan, do review, and through the graduated approach. In terms of the early years, if we can surround the children with the highest needs, those are perhaps life-limiting disorders and life-threatening, then, you know, that's a cohort that will be wrapped in statute. In terms of our early years teams, what I've asked the teams to do is look at a model of delivery of upskilling the workforce. Because what happens at the moment is they work with individual children lots of times, and that is not creating a system where we are sustainable, because the children move on. So I've tasked the Notify team within my service to look at what can we do differently to provide the level of support to settings to ensure they can meet needs. What I've also asked them to do is what we are looking at, Sarah, in terms of my service reviews, is what can we give free of charge across Warwickshire, so that it's not done on a postcode lottery or a finance, that it is at a point of need. Again, what we are doing in terms of early help and in terms of the local offer is linking, because what we want to do is enable our families as well. And, you know, there's a huge voluntary service out there. There's early help offer. There's lots of, you know, sort of webinars, and it's how we build that whole local offer together so that families feel supported as well. So I think the review of the Notify service will be happening in about February time, and what we will come out of that is a new way of working really with our settings, and that is offering training and free training and upskilling of the workforce.
I think that upskilling of the workforce has got to be the key there. We recently have had a child with an EHC plan, and the speech and language specialist came in and did some training both with us, with the whole team, and with the parents. So everybody was on the same page. And like you say, that's not an additional cost or an extra service coming in, but I'd really like to see lots more of that kind of thing happening that everyone can benefit from.
Absolutely, and part of that, when I mentioned the local offer, what we're looking at is how can we put like podcasts on there, so when families or professionals and toolkits, so actually we are giving you the tools, the strategies, the training, and the network that we can support you as well. So, you know, I think there will be lots of changes here as we move through, and I'm more than happy to get you involved if you've got some spare time, you know. And I think
that sounds great. Definitely.
Yeah, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't want to jump in if I shouldn't, but I can see a couple of hands up. I can see an N-E. Is that Nick?
That's me, Dwayne. Just a quick one, comment on page 8, Dwayne. You're missing my school on there, Evergreen School, which is just pointing out it's an extra 270 spaces.
I'm so sorry. Oh God,
That's all right.
So sorry, Nick.
Just thought I'd point it out for information.
Noted, and I'll get it amended. Okay. I have another hand up, which is Faye.
Hi, Dwayne.
Hi, Faye.
Hi. So I've just in terms of upskilling of the workforce, what are we doing in terms of engaging with new teachers? So the initial teacher training program, Teach Direct, things like that, that send support. So I know obviously a lot of this is talking about high needs, but we've got to consider that there are many SEND support children that end up in the high needs block because the provision at SEND support isn't adequate, and it leads to escalation, it leads to trauma. What are we doing working with teacher training, universities, programs to actually change the, I know we're limited what we can do, but surely we can be lobbying more widely in terms of the teachers coming in getting more than half a day of special educational needs as part of their overall teacher training programme.
Absolutely, Faye. In terms of, I can't agree with you even more. In saying that, I have corresponded with staff within the authority, and that's really within my control.
Of course,
yeah, and one of the things I've said first and foremost, it is about quality teaching first.
Yeah.
And again, my school improvement colleagues is getting the understanding and the narrative that we are teachers of all children, with or without special needs, first and foremost. In terms of things that I can control, one of the things I have asked is for the EP service to have a look at their model of delivery, and actually, what are we going to deliver, to all schools. I mean, during COVID, we had a webinar, we had nearly 1,000 participants on there, and the actual cost to deliver that was minimal. Yeah. Same with the literacy package that's just gone out to school. One of my EP colleagues has put that together and delivered in a webinar. The feedback from that has been phenomenal. So, I have a talented service. There's lots of people in the service. There's over 300. So it is, again, how can we get that training out to schools and, where it needs to be at the right time. And for me, what's the important thing is that it's free. And how, so it could be podcasts, it could be webinars, as well as identifying through the whole school SEND where that particular need is and what that particular need is for our colleagues, because yours, Faye, might be totally different to somebody else somewhere.
Yeah, our school is different to another school.
So again,
yeah.
So the whole course, sorry, for those that are not aware, the whole school SEND is an auditing tool that looks at schools and its provision for children and young people with special educational needs. And I think if we do that, then that will give us a clear benchmark across the whole of Warwickshire where we are with our schools. Because Faye, the feedback I had from the resource provisions from a colleague of mine, as I say, was an Ofsted inspector, was phenomenal. He said, what I saw there was really good practice. And therefore, what I want to be able to do is share that and share the expertise we got in our special schools, because, there is talent there and there is good practice. Ultimately, that's what we need to do. In terms of the colleges, I mean, I meet with the DFE advisors every month. I will feed that back. I do know that we do have colleagues that have offered training on these programmes, but I think SEND is a national issue now, so I think things will have to change nationally as well. But certainly we'll raise that with the DFE advisors.
Yeah, that's it. It's ensuring the message gets back through from an authority as a whole that the SEND system, yes, in Warwickshire we're doing these things to fix it, but it's a system, like you say, it's the national system. It's the national conversation around how, special educational needs are teaching is delivered. Something as simple as you've said previously, teaching in a dyslexia friendly style is fine for all children. So why don't we do that?
Right.
You know, move from, you know, the standard paper in schools being white to not being white. It's really simple things, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But it's how do you, obviously you have your circle of influence, Warwickshire has its circle of influence, and it's ensuring that we're not operating just in a silo, that we're actually feeding that back up the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I do meet with the DFE, I meet with the Regional Schools Commissioner, I meet with the School Improvement team. You know, my team is quite talented, and it's really what I want to look is system-wide. How, with what we got, the tools we already got existing, can we improve the system? Or BFA, it is bigger than me, and it's bigger than Warwickshire. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Faye. Sorry, Nick, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to respond to Faye, just to give an example. As a special school, we support a lot of teacher training placements as well from universities, from local teacher training hubs, and deliver it ourselves. So it's definitely something that, as a special school, an example that we're doing lots more work with teacher training and supporting whole term placements rather than just that week or, you know, a couple of days here and there.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Well, that's how it should be. Thank you.
I can see NB with a hand up.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Dwayne, the Winks accreditation, which is the last couple of years has grown and grown, do you see that being a way of, as we talked with the early years, of how we can really support practice between settings? Is that going to continue to grow?
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's phenomenal. And you know, for other colleagues that are not aware, we've got an accreditation, and it's an inclusive, it's Warwickshire Inclusion accreditation. And Dr. Zoe Harwood is in my team and is actually sitting on the senior leadership team now. Obviously, is developed that. For me, it is how we expand that into our school settings, yeah, and going back to the investors in people's time, you know, that you were proud to have that award. And what that does is actually say where our good practices, where our inclusive practices, certainly that is on the card. Absolutely, we want to celebrate success. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dwayne, for your report and the questions. Are there any more comments or questions before we move on? Right, thank you very much. Right, item 6 is Central School Services Funding Overview. I think this is you, Neil, isn't it?
It is, Phil. Yes, thank you. This is the last paper in the overview papers that I'm presenting. So you had ones on the high needs and early years back in October meeting. So it's just to give you the background about how the Central School Services block is calculated centrally and how it's allocated to local authorities. The issue for us, the local authority, is that some of the historic spend is being cut by 20% year on year. So there is a pressure within that budget. It's quite a technical paper, but I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, are there any comments or questions for Neil on this? Yeah, I think the comment I would make, and I did say it to you privately yesterday, was it is very technical. There's a lot of data in here, but I do think it's a very clear exposition of the central block and the factors that affect it. So thanks very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Phil. You're welcome.
And you've stunned everybody into silence, evidently. Okay, anything else? No. All right. Item 7 is Assistant Director's updates. Ian.
Okay, thank you. Really good this afternoon to be hearing from Dwayne in some detail on how we've been mobilising on the Send Change programme. You know, Dwayne and I were reflecting after the last meeting, such a sense of responsibility on delivering the programme, but delivering the programme in a way that makes sense to our education community and our colleagues in social care and health, and in a way that addresses the issues sensitively and in which we deliver positive outcomes for our children, young people and families and their resilience. So much of what we talk about is around children, young people having the opportunities, the support, the guidance, the teaching, the encouragement and the nurture so that they can achieve their potential. There's no problem in any conversation that we have with stakeholders around that as a vision and a goal and a mission. Yes, there'll be tense moments when there are particular aspects and details in terms of a resourcing programme that have to be worked through to a resolution. But we have to keep that eye on what the outcomes should be for our children and young people, because that's where there is a significant driver for the Send Change programme. And clearly, when you look at the National Audit Office data, we have a long way to go to be a genuinely inclusive, consistent practice system. We have some of the most outstanding SEND practice out there, and we have other places where it's not in place yet. And with encouragement, peer support, training, development, appropriate support services, and appropriate decision making, I know that we can make headway. But the summary from the AD is we do feel such a sense of responsibility to deliver for our children, young people, families and colleagues, and to keep you up to date with that progress. And as Dwayne quickly covered there, we'll be doing a finance update report even from the early mobilisation projects at the start of the new year. And we'll be open with you on where we're reaching each meeting on the change programme itself, and you being the Schools Forum, a key body, where we are in terms of the resourcing and the financial implications, both for the local authority, partner organisations and education settings. So that's good. Also having to be really, really conscious that the kids can't wait, but we are needing to, with resolve, make progress on the Send Change programme at the same time as we are, as an education community, working our way through Send response, like COVID response and COVID recovery. Heartening for you. I always think on this marathon of COVID response and recovery, marathon not a sprint, that there has to be evidence behind any hope. And you'll hear some of the hope in the headlines at the moment, whether it's in terms of the pilots that we've been doing on testing, community targeted testing, or whether it's the rollout over the weeks and months ahead of that more widely, followed also by the rollout of vaccine. Those are routes by which our hope can be based on evidence. But another way in which our hope can be based on evidence is what we are seeing in the system. At times it's been a struggle in individual education settings to keep going, but we know why we need to keep going. It's for the safeguarding and the well-being and the education experience of children and young people. At times we've had to deploy anybody with a teacher qualification into some of our settings as well in order to keep safe staffing happening. But all of the vigilance that is happening in terms of hands, face, space, all of the adaptations in the evidence, we can see that it is making a positive difference. And we know at this point now there are no schools that are closed. We also know at times there's been up to 20% of special sector staff missing, but staff absence rates across the board, and particularly in special, are returning back towards normal levels. And then in terms of learner attendance, we know that attendance in special schools is now back to a level that we haven't seen since November the 2nd, in primary to a level we haven't seen since November the 11th, and in secondary the numbers are recovering too. So yes, COVID is out there, but everything that everybody is doing vigilantly is making a difference, and most children are accessing education now, and that is down to the phenomenal high quality leadership from our education leaders under the encouragement and oversight of those of you who are governors, and with the commitment and passion of teachers and support staff. Some of the COVID recovery is going to be for the long term though. We know that there are some children and young people and some colleagues who have had trauma. There are many that are, it's going to be a long journey to recover the gaps in terms of their social learning and experience and aspects of their curriculum recovery from time that they have missed. And there are some, not just those who were not in education settings in the summer, but there are some that are onto their second or third time of self-isolation. And that also then links to wider challenges that there are in society. We know that the numbers who are electively home educating are up, and we have colleagues who are having to carefully triage that for the reasons behind it and make sure those children and young people and parents and carers are aware of what they're taking on as a responsibility, and where possible encouraging them back to schools. And then in terms of wider society too, and the damage to the economy, and we know that the numbers who are claiming free school meals are up 30% on pre-COVID circumstances. So on the positive side, with a very rapid rate, we have mobilised local welfare scheme to almost biblically feed the 17,000 over Christmas and New Year through a voucher scheme. So that's a positive and a community offer, and one where we, because of the method that we're using, we've been able to make sure that we safeguard time out over Christmas and New Year for education setting leaders. So that's a positive. But on the other side, we'll need to be tracking what that increase in free school meals means for us financially, working closely too with the Education and Schools Funding Agency too over the time ahead. So yeah, we'll update on that for you in future meetings as well. But at the end of this AD's report, just any chance that you have to share the respect, the gratitude that we have for colleagues that have been working away all the way through these many months now of adjustments after adjustments. Thank you, and pass those thank yous across. They need every encouragement that we can muster. And, you know, those of you who are governors, make sure those school leader colleagues do take time out over Christmas and New Year too. It's the well-being side of everything that we try to do. So thanks, colleagues.
Okay, Ian, thanks you for that. Any questions or comments for Ian, please? Okay, thank you very much. Item 8 is forward plan, Neil.
Yes, you have a copy of the forward plan. As I said earlier in this meeting, we're going to bring back a paper in January which will update the forward plan, because there are some items that haven't been allocated. We've now allocated some of those, but also we will be looking at changing some of the meeting dates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, and item 9 is Chair's business. We've got an item about the new free special school. Is it, Dwayne, are you going to talk to this?
Hi, I didn't think it was, but I am happy to. Again, let me just pull it up. Sorry. Is this the pay school? Let me just pull it up, please. 1 second.
Yes, it is, Dwayne.
Yeah. So yes, we have met in terms of the pay schools. We have met with the new provider of that school, which is Thrive. So that's they have a few schools. I think one is in the Coventry area, maybe 2 in the Coventry area now. We've set the planned places for September. which is 32 Plan Place provision. We've asked for a disapplication because we have put money aside in the council's reserves to make sure that there's sufficient funding for the placements for the children and young people. Bear with me a minute. Sorry, I'm just losing the report here. 1, 2, 9. Yeah. I can't see any. I didn't realise this was on there. I'm so sorry. So yes, so we've met with the DFE, so everything's going ahead. We're putting a SIF bid together. Roscoe's is putting a SIF bid together because of some works that needs to be done in the premises. Part of the change programme is looking at how we're going to utilise the bungalows, so we can have provision there, which will be a multidisciplinary provision. We do expect the school to be on task for opening in 2021, September 2021. So we will be looking at identifying the children and young people that we need to go there. And when I met with the school leadership last week, one thing we looked at is what age group we would take. And we have decided that year 5, 6 and 7 would be the first cohort that go through, and we would grow the school then in the next 3 years. I don't think there's anything else I can update you on in terms of the phase project, but happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Right, so the notification I had says that this application is to use local authority general funding for 21-22, 22-23, 23-24 and 24-25 for the time lag in DSG funding in the opening of the new free special school. So it will have no impact on any of the 4 DSG blocks.
Absolutely. So with that, as I said, Philip, the council had put away money previously to ensure there was no impact from the reserves, and what we need now is to have permission to use that money. So that we don't actually put any pressure onto any of the blocks. So that has come from council reserves. So all we're asking for is approval from Schools Forum to be able to apply that now.
Okay, any questions, comments on that? Are we happy to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Dwayne, thank you for that, presenting that at very short notice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our business for today. Faye.
Sorry, hi. It was just a quick question on the forward plan. I just missed it as it had moved on quite quickly. The June date, I know obviously Neil said that dates will change. June date,
half term,
half term.
Yeah, that's one of the dates it's going to change.
Awesome. I just thought I'd note that because I was just putting them in my calendar and I was like, hang on.
Yeah, Nikki Burton told me yesterday.
All right, no worries, thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Kevin Griffiths.
Yeah, just worrying about her well-being, really, weren't we?
Yeah, okay. All right, so that brings us to the end of our business today. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, the 14th of January, and it will be again virtually via Microsoft Teams. So have a good Christmas, everybody, a bit of relaxation, and look forward to seeing you on the other side. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
very much.